Greetings, everyone. Live Life Well TV host Robert Landau. We're here with another episode of America's Greatest Personalities. We've been paying tribute to a number of television game show hosts over the last episodes of America's Greatest Personalities. And we want to stay with the sort of game show theme, but not talk about a game show host for this episode. Rather, talk about a very important person who was always behind the scenes amongst some of America's greatest television game shows. Besides that, he also had a rich and varied career in the performing arts. If I say the name Merv Griffin, does that ring a bell for you? It certainly does for me. I remember watching the Merv Griffin talk show as often as I could. I think it was in the mid to late 1970s, possibly early 80s. But he was a great, great entertainer, a great talk show host, and as you will hear, a great game show producer. So, stay tuned for everything you always wanted to know about Merv Griffin. So let's begin by acknowledging the following website, thefamouspeople.com. And here are just a couple of quotes that are directly attributable to the late, great Merv Griffin. He once said, "Las Vegas without Wayne Newton is like Disneyland without Mickey Mouse." I think at one time that was true. Mr. Griffin also said, "Unless it's an emergency, do not bother me after 6 p.m. on the weekends." With a hectic schedule as his was, I can well understand and sympathize with that. Here's the last thing that he was famous for saying: "I'd rather be in another business where a bad cold won't put me out of work." Well, actually, there's one more besides this. But I also sympathize with that. When you make your living using your voice, as so many of us do, if your voice shouldn't be up to par, for example, like a sore throat, that doesn't necessarily last for one day. That can last for many. So what do? You can't grab a microphone and go out and sing. You can't grab a microphone and go out and talk. Even in this situation that you and I are in now, it's very difficult if you happen to have a cold or a flu or worse. So I know what he's talking about. And finally, the great Merv Griffin said, "Make the customer a promise, make sure you deliver it." That's a really good philosophy to have, not only in the entertainment world, but in life in general. Let's continue by talking about Merv's early life and, of course, his childhood. Merv Griffin was born on July 6, 1925 in San Francisco, California, to Mervyn Edward Griffin and Rita Elizabeth Griffin. His father was a stockbroker while his mother was a homemaker. As his family was Roman Catholic, he started singing in church from a very early age. He also used to earn money as an organist. He attended San Mateo High School, from where he graduated in 1942. Then he continued his higher education at the University of San Francisco. During World War II, he was found to have a slight heart murmur, because of which he failed several military examinations. So let's talk about his career, because that is really worth talking about. Merv began his career as a singer on the radio at the age of 19. His performance on the radio was heard by American musician Freddie Martin, who asked him to tour with his orchestra, which Merv did for a few years. It's the best way to get your experience, at least in those days, as a singer, because those tours with the bands were often grueling. I mean, you'd have a performance once a day. You might have been in the same place for a week or 3 days or 2 days or one night. And then you hop on the bus or the train, which brings you to the next city, and the tour goes on and on and on. It's kind of like getting your feet wet in vaudeville. The frequency of performances and the stress of that really gives you a good backbone in the performing arts. By 1945, Griffin had enough money to form his own label, his own recording label, by the name of Panda Records. Soon after, he would release his very first album by the name of Songs of Merv Griffin. It became the first US album to be recorded on magnetic tape. Over the years, he also became very popular by performing in nightclubs. Definitely, he did many of them all across the country. His first song, I've Got a Lovely Bunch of Coconuts, was a huge success, selling over 3 million copies. Well, that's a lot of coconuts, you know. His first work on the big screen was an uncredited role in the 1953 horror movie The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms. He next appeared in the movie So This Is Love in the main role of that picture. Merv continued to appear in films like The Boy from Oklahoma and Phantom of the Rue Morgue. However, he soon became disillusioned with movies and bought his contract back from Warner Brothers, after which he decided to wisely focus on television. And of course, as we now know today, that's where things would definitely excel, escalate, break through for him. From 1958 to 1962, Griffin hosted a game show called Play Your Hunch, which was produced by the incredible team of Mark Goodson and Bill Todman. He next hosted the game show Keep Talking and also temporarily hosted The Price is Right and To Tell the Truth. Bet you didn't know that. In addition, he served as a producer for several game shows, such as Reach for the Stars and 1 in a Million. He eventually started his own show, which I mentioned before and remember so well, called The Merv Griffin Show in 1962, which proved to be a huge success. It eventually went on to win no less than 11 Emmy Awards. Well deserved, I would say. Merv used to tackle bold subjects and also invited controversial guests such as George Carlin, Richard Pryor, and Bertrand Russell. He also received criticism for booking such guests. Nowadays, nobody would bat an eye, but back then, that was really raising a couple of eyebrows. But good for Merv. Merv started the game show Jeopardy in 1964. Of course, as we now know, and still know, maybe you still watch it, Jeopardy was a huge success and continued to earn immense popularity. Over the years, get this, it made a record-winning 33 Emmy Awards. That's a record. Merv created another game show that you just might have heard of called Wheel of Fortune, which aired from 1975. The show enjoyed tremendous popularity and was adapted into several international versions, which, get this, aired in no less than 60 countries. When Merv eventually decided to retire, and I remember that he announced this, if I'm not mistaken, on his talk show. Merv sold his production company, Merv Griffin Enterprises, to Columbia Pictures Television, after which he was named by Forbes as one of the richest Hollywood performers in history. Aside from his game shows, he also ventured into real estate and purchased the Beverly Hilton Hotel and later Resorts International. So his major works, of course, were his talk show, The Merv Griffin Show. It received good ratings and featured several guests, um, as we said, well, actually numerous guests. I remember, well, God, he must have had 3 or 4 guests per show. And Merv would always grab the mic and sing a song, usually to open the show, which was great because that kept him in people's minds as a singer, which helped sell more of his albums and such. But I remember in real life, he was very close with the Gabor sisters, Ava and Jaja. And I think Merv kind of helped make a name or more of a name for those 2 gals by their constant appearances on his show. And their appearances were always very lively, particularly Jaja. I mean, you might remember she was a real character, and that part of her did come out. So anyway, besides Golden Globe and those Emmy Awards that we mentioned, Merv had dedicated 2 of his shows to the topics of transcendental meditation and Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. I mean, in those days, absolutely unheard of. But he was so intelligent and had an eye for keeping things fresh and doing things in the form of presenting it to the television viewing public that had never been done before. Of course, Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy, really great credits. We'll close with his personal life. Merv Griffin was married to Julianne Griffin from 1959 to 1976. The couple had 1 son. Even though they divorced, they continued being good friends. In 91, he was sued by, oh, I remember this, by TV host Denny Terrio, alleging sexual harassment. It was on, I wish I could remember the name of the show. It was kind of like a Dancing with the Stars, but a very early version of that Merv had produced. And Denny Terrio was kind of like an up-and-coming early 20s teen idol, sex symbol, right? And he was the host, I believe, of this particular show that Merv produced. Brent Plott, who had been Merv's employee, also accused him of harassment. However, Griffin stated that both lawsuits were extortions and both lawsuits were eventually dismissed. Merv Griffin, unfortunately, was diagnosed with prostate cancer in 1996, which was treated successfully. However, also, unfortunately, it returned years later and led to his passing on August 12, 2007. His funeral was held at Church of Good Shepherd in Beverly Hills, which was attended by a number of his close friends and celebrities such as Arnold Schwarzenegger, Jack Klugman, and Catherine Oxenberg. But I'm really glad that there were people, entities, personalities, energies, such as the great Merv Griffin in the world. But because of their passion and dedication to keeping things new and fresh and exploring new vistas within, let's say, his career, he helped broaden our view of what the television game show was and is to this day, thanks to him, and what the Great American Television Talk Show was and is today, also thanks to him. But he's not the only one, but he certainly was a worthy and viable contributor to the Great American Talk Show art form. So for all of that and more, I would say that there will never ever be another Merv Griffin. Thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. This has been Robert Landau, Live Life Well TV host.